Welcome back, everyone. We are continuing our semester's theme of meeting Jesus. Jesus, this influencer, greatest influencer that we know. Last time we talked about how Jesus was a human being and what that means that we believe that he was fully human. And so tonight we are going to go the other way and talk about Jesus as God. And what does it mean to us to say that Jesus is also fully God and part of this Holy Trinity that we have as Catholics? So the first thing to explain is that we as Catholics have a kind of confusing way that we talk about God and the way that we think about God. Hopefully you've heard the term before, the Holy Trinity. So we say, the technical term is we believe in three persons of one divine essence. And if you talk to theologians, they'll help you figure out what exactly that means and how it relates. But basically, it is something that is very difficult for us to understand, and any type of metaphor that we try to use as human beings will fall short. I had a professor in college who told me that basically, if you're using any metaphor to describe the Trinity, you're probably saying something heretical in it. So when we talk about the Trinity, it's not like there are three separate beings and they're like in a band and they're all separate members of this group. They are still the same in a way, but it's also not like we just have this one person that we give three different names to, because there are still those three persons. Again, the technical thing, three persons, one essence. It's not something that we can really conceptualize or understand. If you talk to nerdy math people like myself, they'll talk to you about this idea of four-dimensional shapes and how, we live in a three-dimensional world, but we theoretically can say things about fourth-dimensional shapes and actions, specifically like fourth-dimensional cubes are really studied and understood pretty well. But when we talk about fourth-dimensional cubes, it's not something that we can ever conceptualize. It's not something we can ever fully understand and know what it is. We can only say certain attributes, certain aspects, and certain visualizations that fall short, but that we kind of understand in a way. And the same is true of the Holy Trinity. We have these specific attributes, facts, things that we can say about the Trinity, but they don't really help us to conceptualize the entire mystery of our faith. Because when we have these mysteries, as we call them as Catholics, it's not like something that you can ever understand. It's not a mystery that's meant to be solved, but it is a mystery that will always be a mystery, and that we can understand to an extent, but which we will never fully comprehend. So one way to think about it is that each of these three persons of God helps us to understand and relate to God in a different way. So we think about God the Father, and we think about this all-knowing, all-powerful creator of heaven and earth and everything in between. God the Father is the one who's most referenced in the Old Testament. He's kind of this powerful being above everyone who controls everyone and everything. It's also worth noting that we call him our Father. Usually that is the traditional term, but there are also instances in the Old Testament where he's referred to in feminine, so we could also say the Creator Mother as well as the Creator Father. It could be the same thing, but usually we just stick with Father because that is just what's happened in the church over time. And so in giving God this title of Father, of Creator, it's supposed to help evoke this sense that you might have had when you were little, looking up to your parents, to your mom and dad, about how much bigger than you they were, about how much smarter and stronger and in general, more powerful than you they were at that time. And it's supposed to help us understand that compared to this almighty creator, we are his creation, and we look up to him and we depend on him in any way, much like you depend entirely on your parents for your first couple years of life. So next we move on to the second person of the Trinity, God the Son. This is, of course, Jesus, who we've been talking about. And when we think about what it means that God is the Son, it's a lot of what we were talking about last week, talking about how God became a human being, became a son, like we are all children of God, and really entered into humanity so that he could experience what it's like to be us, and so that we can have this better example of how we should live and how we should be in our lives. When we talk about God the Son, it's about a God that knows us intimately, knows what it's like to be us, and knows the struggles that we go through and the anxieties we might have. And lastly, we have God, the Holy Spirit, the third person of the Trinity. And this is a little more hard to understand. There's not like a New Testament that's focused on the Holy Spirit and how the Holy Spirit acts in the world. But we know from the Bible that when Jesus died and resurrected, he came back to earth for a little bit. And then as he was leaving, he also told his disciples, "After I'm gone, I will send you my Spirit, and I will still be with you in that way." And so when we talk about the Holy Spirit, it is this third person who is still with us now in the present, who is helping us in our actions, in our thoughts, in our prayers. The Holy Spirit is really God acting in us and through us and in the world currently, whereas God the Father is the creator who made everything and is a part of everything. The Son is Jesus who was here and is now in heaven, and the Holy Spirit is God still in us, still acting with us. And some of these divisions are a little questionable. You could argue that there's overlap, that there's not necessarily distinctions, and that's part of the whole Trinity is 3-in-1 complicated nonsense. But that kind of general distinction helps us to make the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit conceptually different, and helps us a little bit to figure out how we relate to God differently in different ways and how we understand God. And then the last thing we like to think about as Catholics when we talk about the Trinity and Jesus as God is how important it really is for us that the Trinity is these three people together. The fact that we have a God who is different persons in relationship with each other helps us to understand how we should be living our lives and how important it is for us to have relationships. And the way that each of us are made in God's image, not to say that we each have three different parts of God inside us, Father, Son, Holy Spirit, etc., etc. But we're made in God's image in that we are called and drawn to this relationship and this connection. And especially in the world now, it can be difficult to find relationship with people and to make friends, to meet others, to know others. But even in a non-pandemic world, it is sometimes hard for us to know that we are meant to be with other people and that we are loved and we should love others. If anything, the Holy Trinity is an example for us to strive for, understanding that each of us are independent and different and separate, but that we are called to be in community together as a family, as friends, as a church, as a country, as a planet, as a whole human race. We are called to this community and this relationship and this love, and we should never forget that.